might be wondering what this is. Well, all of this is a teaser for future videos. Once I'm done editing and posting the trip videos, you'll see some home renovation action. The reason I'm talking to you from the future is because I want to tell a story about expectations. But before that, I need to fill in some gaps. I don't have a lot of footage following the days after leaving Florida because those days were rough, to say the least. After the disappointment of not seeing a rocket launch, I headed back to my hotel, got 6 hours of sleep, and then ate breakfast at CJ's Waffles. In addition to the eggs, sausage, and hash browns, they also served me a heaping portion of food poisoning. I started getting nauseous a few hours later, and after regurgitating some of those sausages in a crowded grocery store bathroom, I decided to call it a day and book a hotel. The nausea persisted, and for a while I began to fear that my food poisoning was something even worse, perhaps even COVID. But a new dawn brought with it the rest of the classic symptoms of food poisoning. I'll spare you the details, but if I drank a glass of water, 15 minutes later that water would be ejected at high velocity from my anus. Actually, I lied. I'm not going to spare you the gory details. My condition persisted through checkout time, but nonetheless I decided to push ahead and continue on with my plans to explore New Orleans. And for a while, everything was fine. I enjoyed my time strolling through the French Quarter, acquiring classy stickers and fine art. I got to experience some authentic Cajun cuisine as well. Unfortunately, that lunch was the trigger that reminded my body that it still hated me. I left New Orleans and headed north. It wasn't too long before I needed to avail myself of a gas station bathroom. And this particular gas station bathroom was not quite as bad as the bathroom featured in the classic 1996 film Trainspotting, but it was close. There was fecal matter smeared on the seat, across which there was also a soiled strip of toilet paper plastered onto it. The floor was more wet than dry, and in the corner there was a wastebasket filled about 2 feet to overflowing with a mountain of used tissues. Given the conditions of the bathroom, I was not about to use my usual strategy of praying at the porcelain altar, so I just stood over the toilet, lined myself up, and let her rip. However, my aim was slightly off, and the first volley of vomit landed partly on the seat, which then splashed onto my legs. There were a few volleys more after that, and suffice it to say, I did not leave that bathroom in a better condition than I found it in. Feeling moderately better, I continued on to Alexandria, Louisiana, to find a hotel. I arrived after nightfall, and with mounting horror, realized that every single hotel in a 100-mile radius was booked solid due to the recent hurricane. Frantically Googling around for a place to stay, I saw a ray of hope, an ad for Priceline that said it had found a hotel for me in Alexandria. So I immediately clicked, I put in my credit card details, and plunked it down $200 non-refundable dollars for a hotel room in Alexandria. However, as soon as I hit the submit button and the money left my account, I realized that I had just purchased a hotel in Alexandria, Virginia. So without a place to stay, I consulted the National Forest Service maps and picked a likely looking location that was about a half-hour drive. I went there and discovered, to my surprise, that it actually was a pretty good location. So I set up my tent, I got to experience pooping in the woods for the first time. I also vomited in my hair slightly, but then I crawled in my tent, I went to sleep, and I actually got a really good night's sleep. The next morning I hung around the campsite for a few hours waiting to see if there would be any more problems, but the symptoms subsided and I decided to continue on with my trip. I never expected any of that to happen. There's a saying, expect the worst, hope for the best. If I had taken that saying to heart, perhaps I wouldn't have been so constantly surprised when things went wrong, as they so often did. I had many expectations for this trip. I expected to enjoy my time camping. I expected to drive 4 hours a day, find a secluded campsite in a beautiful wooded area. I expected to be able to chill out and relax, sit in a chair, read a book, work on my laptop. It didn't work out that way at all. Almost every single time I camped, I got less than 4 hours of sleep due to one disaster or another. Quite often it was simply the weather that was the worst part. I had grown far too accustomed to indoor living, and I'd forgotten how brutal nature can be. Compounding this issue was the fact that my car was full of stuff, my entire life, since it was also a moving trip. Because of this, there was no room to relax. I couldn't even put my seat back. All I could do in my car was drive. This lack of a relaxation space, or any sort of a home away from home, led to stress that just built up over time, and is one of the reasons why I ended up staying in hotels far more often than I expected to. I have far greater sympathy and understanding now for the truly homeless. If I felt this way after just a few days on the road, and this is with supplies and a car, I can only imagine the soul-crushing despair a person must feel when everything they own can fit in a backpack and they have no idea where or how they'll sleep or eat in the next few days. I'm really glad that I went on this trip. I learned a lot about how to camp and rough it. I learned what not to do on a road trip. I experienced many things that I never would have experienced if I hadn't gone on the trip, such as scorpions in my boot. But also, by the end of the trip, I was really, really eager for it to be over. And then suddenly the trip was over, but the adventures never stop, because now I am remodeling an entire house, and I've never remodeled anything in my life. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss those videos. I arrived after nightfall and discovered, I did blah, 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 blah.